Hi, this is Rabbi Chaim Kaufman. Welcome to our 174th installment of the Torah portion of the week. We are holding by Parshas Behar Bechukosai. We're going to finish up the book of Leviticus. Again, another double parsha. As we explained before, there are certain times that we're going to have a double parsha. In order that we're going to finish the entire Torah, right, in 1 year. So over here we have a double parsha. Parshas Behar speaks about Shemitah, Sabbatical year, which we're going to speak about. Speaks about the Levitical cities. Speaks about idolatry. And Bechukosai speaks about the miracle, the blessings, and the curse, striving in Torah. Right, we've spoken about that before, etc. So we're going to speak a little bit about Shemitah, a little bit, not exactly what we've spoken about before. Try and keep it a little bit fresh. Torah tells me, chapter 25, verse 22. Right, the book of Leviticus, again, chapter 25, verse 22. What does the Torah tell me? It says you're going to sow the 8th year, but you eat from the old crop. Till the 9th year, until the arrival of its crop, you will eat the old. So what's going on? So essentially what's going on is you're leaving the land fallow. You're not allowed to plant the land, right? You're not allowed to plant. You're not allowed to really do that much with the field, right? You're supposed to leave it fallow. The Torah tells us that God's going to give a bumper crop in the 6th year. Now, obviously, if that wouldn't happen, right, then obviously, God forbid, the Torah would be not true. And who's going to keep Shemitah anyway? Who's going to keep the sabbatical year? Right, if you don't get a bumper crop in the 6th year, what are you going to eat? Right, that we're going to see. So, it says, Mori V'Rebbe, Arav Agon, Ramosh Shlita, should be well. Brings down in his commentary on Chumash, in Tam V'Das, and he says that after a year, you don't sow the land. What do you see? You see, God's going to give you parnasa. God's going to give you livelihoods. Don't think if I don't work the land, I'm going to starve. Because if that would have been the case when the Torah was given, it would have been in that first generation or later that this did not happen, right? Then who's going to keep the Torah? And the whole thing, God forbid, is a travesty of a mockery of a sham, right? But you're going to see a bumper crop, and therefore he's going to have livelihood for a year, even if he leaves the land fallow. We're going to see an interesting story coming. So, what does the person think? Person will think, since he gave me a bumper crop, and he gave me parnasa for the year, what's he going to think? I'll sit in my house, I won't do anything. And then God's going to provide. God will give me a livelihood, because I have an obligation to leave the land fallow. So since I have an obligation, obviously it's in the land of Israel, right? That's where the mitzvah is. I'll leave the land fallow, I'll sit home, and God will provide, right? That is the blessing that God is certainly going to provide. So, I'll sit in my house, I won't do anything. God will take care of my needs. The Torah tells me, right, let's take it one step further. So not only that, during that year, God's going to provide, but if I don't do anything, I sit at home, God's going to take care of my needs. Right, that's what it sounds like. Comes on the Torah, and the Torah warns us. My Rebbe says, he says you have to plant in the 8th year. Doesn't mean you sit around and do nothing. You got to plant in the 8th year. You have to go according to the way of the world. And therefore, you have to work hard to bring in parnasa. Right, so just as a side point, we mentioned this before, that there's disagreements between the Chovos Chovavos, its rights and duties of the heart, and the Vilna Gaon, and Rav Elijah Vilna. According to the duties of the heart, he says that when it comes to making a living, you got to put your best foot forward. And either God will bless it or he won't bless it, but it doesn't matter. You don't sit home doing nothing. You got to put your best foot forward. It comes on the Chovos Chovavos. And if you rely on God for everything, right, you don't put your best foot forward, etc. And you say, God's going to take care of my needs. I'm just going to sit and learn. If you're at that level, which most of us aren't, if you're at that level, you don't have to worry. right? You don't have to work on doing your hishtadlus of putting your best foot forward, right? If you're at that level, most people are not at that level. Now I do know somebody, does minimal involvement, and God takes care of his needs. Right? You got to be on the level, right? If you're not on the level, you can't fool yourself, right? So my Rebbe here says, so how do I know we hold like the Chovos Levavos, like the duties of the heart? You got to put your best foot forward. Look what the verse says. Verse tells me in the 8th year I got to work. Can't just sit home and do nothing, because what would I have thought? Just like God's going to give me my livelihood during the year, during this sabbatical year, then what am I going to think? I'll just sit home next year. God will take care of my needs. If according to the Vilna Gaon, you're holding at that level, good. But most of us aren't. So we got to put our best foot forward. And what's the proof? Because the Torah tells me. Torah tells me you got to plant in the 8th year. If God wanted you to sit at home and do nothing, right? He wanted you to sit and learn, or whatever the case is. He wouldn't tell you to plant in the 8th year. Why is he telling you to plant in the 8th year? Because he's telling you that's the way of the world. Right? That's the way most people live in this world. And you can't say, I'm like the minority. Because who's to say? God's going to help you. So, Rebbe here brings a medrash. And he says like this. You're going to go across the border. Right? You're going to go to the border of your brother's B'nai Esav. Right? Good old Uncle Esav. You're going to cross the borders. And you're going to eat their produce or whatever. And you're going to take what's yours in this world. Right? Forget about spirituality. You do that, you're going to lose spirituality. Right? But you're interested in this world. But then what does the Torah tell me? You're going to eat. You're going to eat in this world. The Torah tells me God's going to bless you. Right? In other words, if you leave the land fallow, right, eat from B'nai Esav, they'll take care of you. They'll feed you. Okay? Sit around. So I might think I can sit around and do nothing. They'll take care of me. But it says you have to use the work of your hands. You gotta work. Right? If you use the work of your hands, you'll be blessed. If not, you won't be blessed. Right? In other words, you have to go in the way of the world. Right? He brings the medrash to show that you can't just rely on God. You got to put your best foot forward, like we said before. But what about the generation? And what about the generation in the desert that received the man? That received the manna that fell from heaven? They got a double portion every Friday. Right? Because they weren't allowed to get it on Shabbos. They say that was miraculous. And they didn't have to work at all. Right? The man fell, they went to collect it, that's it. Come Friday, get double portion. Because you're not allowed to go out and collect it on Shabbos. But my Rebbe said it wasn't just they got it for nothing. That God just gave it to them. It's because of their hard work. Right? Their travels. Right? They travel one place to another. They had to work hard. So you say you can't tell me, I'm going to sit home and do nothing. And if I sit home and do nothing, God's going to take care of my needs. You got to work. Right? You got to put your best foot forward. Right? That's what we see from the Medrash. So he says the person's not going to get sustenance in this world. He's only going to get it through hard work. And God has to bless it. Whether he works hard, whether he works a little, right? God is going to, either bless it or not. Obviously, we want him to bless it. But you have to put your best foot forward. But you have to remember, God runs the world. And if he wants you to suffer, he wants you to pray harder, he squeezes you. That no matter what you do, or whatever, you have difficult times. Right? He wants you to have more faith in him. He makes you work harder. Right? Your faith is going to be stronger. You're going to pray better and all that. But you have to work hard. You can't sit back, bottom line. You can't sit back and say, God's going to take care of me. God's going to take care of all my needs. I don't have to do anything. right? Because the curse of the ground, go back to Adam and Eve, right? What's the curse? Curse is, by Adam, is b'zei zapecha. You have to work hard to bring bread. It's going to be thorns, thistles, whatever, but you have to work hard to bring food. That means you have to work hard for livelihood. It's not going to be given to you on a platter. Right? So whatever you says, it's got to be the work of your hands. You cannot sit back and say, God's going to provide. Now again, according to the Vilna Gaon, if you're on that level, it's one thing. Right? But he says you have to go according, the Rebbe says you got to go according to the norm. And what's the norm? The norm is you work. That's the norm. Now, there was a miracle that was done that in the sabbatical year we didn't work the land. You got a blessing. You got a bumper crop in the 6th year. Right? And God's in charge. Because if he wouldn't have done that, it was going to leave the land fallow. How much can God work on a person's belief in him if he doesn't fulfill? Right? He doesn't fulfill the promise. How can it be? That's the question. Where's the faith? Where's the faith? God's going to say in 7th year, you got to leave your land fallow. What's the farmer going to say? What am I going to eat? I got no food. Right? That's the obvious question. So Torah tells me God's going to bless you. You're not going to have to worry about parnasa for that year. But after the 7th year, you need to go back to work. Just like everyone goes back to work. Right? You got to start planting in the 8th year. Now, here comes the interesting story. Somebody came to ask my Rebbe a story. Someone's a farmer. Someone was a farmer in the land of Israel. And he lives in a moshav. Right? He lives in a place where the vast majority of people are secular. And he became an Orthodox Jew. And he's the only one who left his land fallow. Right? Everyone else in the sabbatical year worked the land. Now he's at a disadvantage. Right? The other people are going to be making money normally, hopefully, or more, whatever it is. And he's not making any money. He's not going to make any money from the field. He's got to leave the land fallow. Right? So he asked him that he's not going to work the land. He's going to learn Torah for a year. So what happened? He's very happy learning Torah. Right? His needs being taken care of. And then after the sabbatical year, what happens? He's going to go back to work. Right? Just like the Torah says. But what happened? He left his land fallow. And he lost it. Land went bad. Can't work it now. So he lost his livelihood. Right? He lost his livelihood. So he comes to my Rebbe and he says, where's the haftacha? Where's the promise? That God promises you're going to be blessed. Everyone else didn't work the land. They have livelihood. I didn't work the land. My field got ruined. So what's going on? This is how God treats the people that serve him? How can it be? So my Rebbe answered in what he heard in the name of the Chazon Ish. The great Chazon Ish. Rav Avram Yeshaya Karowitz Zecher Tzadik Livrocho. May his name be blessed. Great rabbi of the last generation. So the Chazon Ish said that this blessing that God gives them. In other words, they're not going to work the land. God's going to give them the blessing. What's his blessing? He says they get the blessing when they're fitting to receive God's lights and divine providence explicitly. In other words, if a person's holding where they should be, then the divine providence is going to be revealed. Right? In other words, it's going to be a miracle. Right? And different things will happen. This person will have livelihood even if he doesn't work the land. Right? But he has to be holding. But he says that's only when God's providence, when his divine providence is revealed. Problem is, God's presence is not revealed today because we're living in a time of Hester upon him. We're living in a time of God's hiddenness. So God's presence isn't revealed. We don't see open miracles, right? There are no open miracles. And because of the darkness of the exile, there's no way to see God's greatness. Right? There was no way to see that greatness. But he says that's only by the people who keep the sabbatical year. By people that believe in God and have proper faith, and they keep what God tells them, then the command is the bracha. Right? Keeping the command, that is the blessing itself. And the merit for doing that, for the ones that hold by the sabbatical year, do not work the land, they are going to get their just reward. Right? They're going to have that forever. Can't even imagine what that reward is. So let's imagine. Person works hard, comes back to Judaism, takes off the sabbatical year. There's a blessing. God's going to give him parnasa. So what happens in the 8th year? He stops learning, goes back to his field, because he didn't do anything with his field, and his field got ruined. Now I got to start from scratch. What's going to be? What about the blessing? Says the Chazon Ish, an unbelievable thing. Chazon Ish says the blessing's there. You're going to get the reward plus. Right? Because what you're doing goes against nature. Goes against our own understanding. Because the reality is, who's going to give up their livelihood? You don't know what's going to be in a year. The land could get ruined. You don't water it, nothing. Could get ruined. You know, there are stories of people who kept the sabbatical year, other people who didn't, and other people's crops got ruined, and theirs didn't because the land was fallow. Right? Many, many stories like that. But this guy feels like he got ripped off. Right? Totally got ripped off. Because this field is now problematic. Well, it's not problematic, you can't use it. Right? So Chazon Ish said, doing mitzvahs you never lose out. Now, in this case, even if his field got damaged, it doesn't matter. Because he kept the command. Once he kept the command, the blessing's going to come. Whether it's in this world or the next. Right? Most likely the blessing's going to come in the next world. Right? And the blessing's going to be double, triple, quadruple what even he can imagine. Because it's tremendous self-sacrifice. But a person could say, this is what I gave up my life for. Right? This is the Torah. This is the merit. I mean, look at Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva, right, during this time, we just ended the 24,000 students dying, right, on Lag BaOmer, 33rd of the Omer. Rabbi Akiva didn't start learning until he was 40. And all these students, they died, took another few students, they transmitted Torah Sheba'al Peh. They transmitted oral tradition. That being the case, what happened to him? Talmud tells us he got caught by the Romans. And Rabbi Akiva says, I was always bothered by the verse, to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul. Meaning, when am I'm willing to give up my life. When's that going to happen? Now, not everyone agreed with him. But he got caught and he was so excited to be able to sanctify God's name. And he's giving this over to his students as he's having his flesh ripped from his body. And he said, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. He said, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And then he died. And then the Talmud says, Rabbi Akiva Muchen L'chai Olam Haba. Rabbi Akiva is welcomed to the next world. Right? So, but the students asked him, Rebbe, this is what it means? Ad Kam, this is what it means? Rabbi Akiva tells the stories, it's being carved up. So you can say, well, where's the merit? Where's the merit for the Torah that he kept? Where's the merit for the crowns of the Torah? In the Sefer Torah, the letters. Some of the letters have crowns on them. And he can darshan and he can explain them unbelievably. Look at the knowledge, the depth Rabbi Akiva had. So they said, this is what it means. He's welcome in the next world. He fulfilled what God wanted. The merit's going to be double, triple, quadruple in the next world. We don't want that to happen to us. Right? It's not that Rabbi Akiva, God forbid, is a masochist. What it means is he was willing to live his life at a very high level. And he understood the consequences. But don't think because he kept the Torah, he didn't get anything. Right? The merit, oh, what's the merit worth? Yeah. This is exactly what my Rebbe here says. The fact that they kept the whole Torah, in this case, they guarded the mitzvah of keeping the sabbatical year. So this guy, this farmer, has a claim. He's got a claim against God. Where's the blessing? What about people, great philanthropists, gave tons of money to charity and then lose it? Or have it stolen or whatever? What about all the charity they gave? Aren't they going to get merit for the charity? 100%. If they wouldn't get charity, they still would have lost it. Potentially. So it's better they gave the charity. At least they got the merit. But isn't it true? Person gives charity, it's going to guard him. That is true. So where's the merit? No one says you get the merit in this world. Not only that, you don't want the merit in this world. The reason is very simple, because if you use the merit in this world, what do you have left? What are you going to get in the next world? That's why evil people have it easy. Because God gives them the merit for whatever mitzvah they did. They helped Granny cross the street. That's it. Right? God has to reward them. It's part of the process. You do something good, you get reward. You do something bad, you get punished. But God can give them their reward in this world. So they won't have anything in the next. So over here, the reward is unbelievable. But we don't always see how things work. Because the Torah itself, again, says the Chazon Ish, we're living in very dark times. We're living in times where God's presence is concealed. And because His presence is concealed, we don't see. Right? We don't see. But that doesn't mean there's no blessing. Because we want to see direct results. You do this, God's going to take care of you here. Right? There are plenty of people who keep Shemitah, even if it's hard. Right? They keep the sabbatical year. But even if it's hard, they get through. Doesn't mean the fields get ruined. Maybe some will. But the point is, you never lose by doing mitzvahs. And it doesn't matter how it looks in this world. Go to the example of money. Right? What we said before. Person gives a lot of money to charity and he loses it. You say if you help people, you shouldn't lose it. God's ways are hidden. Maybe He took it away because there was a decree of a death penalty. So God took away the money. Right? Ani choshev kames. One of the 4 people considered like a dead person. Poor person. Right? A poor person considered like a dead person. Maybe that's the reason. Could be any number of reasons. So what about all the mitzvahs that he gets for charity, for giving charity? And if he gave to the right people, to the right organizations, it's going to be there in the next world. But just because it's not here in this world does not mean the blessing doesn't apply. We want direct results. We want instantaneous results. We do the right thing, boom. Right? One of the worst transgressions, Talmud tells us, is if a person prays and he says, okay, God, you're going to answer my needs right now because I prayed so well. Right? Obviously, that's gaiva. That's being conceited. One of the worst transgressions. But over here, what are you saying? I prayed so well. Now we'll speak about that. I prayed so well, God, you owe me. You got to answer what I asked for. Now, first of all, who said you prayed so well? Because when a person says that, God's going to open your file. God's going to see, let's see. Did he really pray so well? What was his intention? Because if a person makes such a statement and that wasn't the case, which is probably true, probably wasn't the case, his mind probably wandered at least once. But why does God have to answer us in general? Because we understand we're going to get reward. But we have to serve God like we're not going to get reward. Says the Chovos Chavavos. Says duty to the heart. Why is it? Why is it that God gives us reward? Mishnah Perkei Avos says in Ethics of Our Fathers that it's better to serve God without getting reward. And not only that, even if you learned a lot of Torah and a lot of wisdom, that's what you created to do. So what, you want reward also, pig? What do you want in reward? That's what you're obligated to do. God said, I don't care, eat the matzah, pray, put on tefillin, phylacteries, do all these other things I told you to do. You want reward? Don't be a pig. Why do you deserve it? So says the Chovos Chavavos. Why do you deserve it? You don't. That was easy. Why do you deserve it? Why do you get it? Because God says, I'm going to do a chesed. I am going to do an act of loving kindness. If I created you to sit and learn, to do mitzvahs and all that, and you did it, you want reward? Why in the world should I give you reward? Comes along the Chovos Chavavos and says, he only gets reward for one reason. He gets reward because God has compassion, and God does a chesed. He does an act of loving kindness. Because the reality is he doesn't have to. He's got no obligation. He does it because he wants to do an act of chesed. So that doesn't mean anything we do, no matter how great the reward is, we may not see it now. And it could be. The good thing that we did, we gave charity, it could be. Someone gave a lot of charity, loses. I could lose money, but you never lose from doing a mitzvah. So what happened to all the mitzvahs that he got for the sake of charity? They're there. They're stored up in the next world. And he's going to get that reward. But the fact that he had it hard, and the money's taken away, could be for any number of reasons. Right? That's not really the topic. But it could be for any number of reasons. So says the Chazon Ish, you did something that God commanded, you never lose. You're never going to lose. It's just that, and God's ways are hidden. We can't fathom his ways today. It's impossible. But it doesn't mean he doesn't get the blessing. Now, people keep the sabbatical year. Farmers, they see miracles. Now you get funds helping them during the year, to stay afloat, etc. But people see miracles. Because it's not going to be, you're going to do something that the Torah says is a good thing for you and you're going to suffer. Could be other things going on, what your soul has to go through, reincarnation. Okay. Right? Not saying not. But you don't lose. So we can't see things clearly. We want direct results. Right? You do this, that happens. Sabbatical year, I get livelihood, everything's good. My field doesn't get ruined. But we don't have God's glory in this world. We can't see God face to face, so to speak, like in the time of the giving of the Torah, like in the time of the first temple, where God's presence was readily felt. We don't see it. It's not there. We don't fathom it. We don't fathom it. Doesn't mean the goodness isn't there. Doesn't mean the reward's not going to be there. You know, at the end of the day, we can't worry what God's going to do. God knows exactly what He's doing. We have to worry what we're going to do. What our actions are. I want to ask my Rebbe this question. A number of years ago, many bus bombings daily. People were afraid to go on the bus here in Israel. So I asked them, politics, this, that, different things, do like this, do like that. My Rebbe answered very simple. He said, are you happy 95% of the way God runs the world? Thought about it and I said, yeah. He says, the other 5% you don't understand, you won't understand in 10 lifetimes. In my language. You're not going to understand how God runs the world. Look at the story of Rabbi Akiva. Right? We don't understand. God's ways are hidden. Tremendously hidden. So we have to have the proper outlook. We have to have the proper belief in God. The proper faith. Because if we don't, then we have a lot of questions. Doesn't mean you're not allowed to question. But at the end of the day, God knows what He's doing. And we're living in a world of tremendous Hester punning. Right? Tremendous God hiddenness. What we see, we don't understand. What we think we understand, we really don't understand. In the Torah that we learn is a drop in the bucket. Or the prophet says, drop in the ocean. That's how vast the Torah is. We're just uncovering a few surfaces, maybe. So the way God runs the world, we got to let Him do what He needs to do. You know, we need to live. We need to survive. That's for sure. But we got to let God do what He needs to do. And by questioning He doesn't know what He's doing, well, that's heresy. And a lot of things that we see, and I mentioned this many times, there are a lot of things we see we don't fathom at all. Does that mean God's not there pulling the strings? Doesn't mean that. Doesn't mean everything's just hefker, ownerless? Doesn't mean that. It means we don't have the eyes to see and understand. We can't see what we're going through right now. We have to, see things in the future. And then come back and see if it makes sense. Right? Try and understand things that way. Why are we going through it? You'll never understand. Some things may be a little bit clearer than others, but in general, we're not going to understand. And that's not a cop-out, because we're not God. We're not infinite. For Chazon Ish over here is very important. To understand, we're going to get reward. To understand that reward's waiting for us. But also to understand it's not direct. And to understand there can be other things going on. And just because this person lost his field, does that mean the blessing's not there? Could ask the question. Can certainly ask the question. But we have to understand we're not in charge. We have to understand God runs the world. And we have to understand we're living in a world of hiddenness. Tremendous hiddenness. And we also have to remember that we're not God. There's so many things we don't know. So many things we don't understand. That's not a lack of faith. That is putting things in perspective. In the right perspective. So I want to remind everyone, I have a class on duties of the heart. Started a new section about humility. It's every Tuesday night. 9 o'clock New York time. I also have a class in the book of Leviticus every Sunday, 9 o'clock New York time, 9 o'clock in the morning. 2 Q&As every Tuesday and Thursday. That's 10 o'clock in the morning New York time. I have controversial issues every Monday. Monday it's 1 o'clock Central Time, 2 o'clock Eastern Time, 9 o'clock Israel time. I also have conversion classes. I also do Pirkei Avos on Saturday. Right, 10 o'clock Pacific Time, 1 o'clock Eastern Time. And that is 9:30. It's actually 2:30 Eastern Time. And it's going to be 9:30 Israel time. So anyone interested in any of that, take a look at my Facebook fan page, Beyond Orthodox Conversion to Judaism. You can send me an email, rabbichaimkoffman@gmail.com, RABBICHAIMCOFFMAN @gmail.com. Wishing everyone a great Shabbos.